a nice example. Thanks so much, Dr. Nitin, in terms of scaling, teletriaging being done at scale, very interesting statistics. And we'll have time for Q&A after Mr. Pilot comes in. We'll get the Q&A piece going because I'm sure you have a lot of questions. Next, I wanted to really invite Ashok Chandravarkar from Intel.
Good morning, everyone, and it's good to be here on the second day and see that there's still a crowd here. So what I will do is I'm going to respect Vishal and the chair over here and say that try and give you a message within 10 minutes if possible. It's going to be tough, but I'll try and do that in terms of what Intel is doing in healthcare, specifically from a scale perspective, and why we are here. So if you start with it, we have a vision statement which our CEO made around a couple of years back, that this decade we will create and extend computing technologies to connect and enrich the lives of every person on this earth. That's a vision statement for a decade. Now, if you want to translate that vision statement from a healthcare perspective, we thought about it for quite a bit of time, and then earlier this year at the United Nations, we made an announcement, a commitment. It's called the Intel 1M by 15 Health Program Commitment. What does it state? It basically means that we are going to enable 1 million health workers in developing countries, note developing countries, with technology, education tools, and 21st century ICT skills by 2015. The reason why we've kept 2015 is because it aligns with the MDG goals, and we've been working along with the WHO and the various other partner organizations who are part of the innovation working group to ensure that ICT can act as an enabler. We do not consider ICT to replace anything. It can only act as an enabler to help achieve or accelerate towards achieving the MDG goals. You could actually see that commitment on that website. You can also look at, there are various tools which we'll be using. Few of the tools, all of these are, I would call open source or open access. These are tools, for example, could be self-paced learning on basic ICT. The second one is more of a train the trainer kind of a concept of first-time users of PCs to be able to actually learn how to use ICT. So we are actually working on the Easy Steps activity. It's a program actually, but modifying it to look at health workers. It's not being done in India, but it's being done in Philippines. So it's not something which we are looking at as a one country specific activity, but we will look at it as all developing countries. For example, the school healthcare education platform has been deployed in Sri Lanka, and the Sri Lankan government has made a commitment. If you go onto that same link, you'll see a Sri Lankan commitment saying that their 100,000 health force would be using this platform as a training meet. Now this is again an open access platform, which is no license fees. So that's the commitment which we are making towards trying to help transform ICT. Now if you look at health workers, if I start looking at the challenges, we started narrowing it down and saying that, okay, where does the problem lie and where is commonality to the problem? And we started looking at going down to the last mile of health delivery. If you go to the last mile, it's basically the health workers. You can call them whatever you want them. In India, they're called ANMs. In Philippines, they're called barangay workers. In Sri Lanka, they're called preventive health nurses. There's a separate cadre for preventive health over there. So we've done workshops across Nigeria, Ghana, Philippines, Sri Lanka, India, multiple states in India to come out with I would call as a basic need, the challenges which they face. And these are self-explanatory over here, but this is largely, what you see on the left-hand side is largely the ones which are on data collection and acquisition and analytics. What do I do with the data which I collect from the field? Is it meaningful? Because what I collect on the field is actually patient data. The moment I transmit it to the health management information systems to the government, when it goes beyond a taluk, it becomes statistical data. How do I start looking at doing some meaningful use? How does the person on the ground take action based on the data which is there? On the right was the aspects about the training and the challenges which they face with regard to training. So we started looking at what are the current models of training, and we found that it's largely classroom based, typically a one-time training which is done for a given subject. There's no assessment methodology which is in place post the training to actually know whether they've understood the subject or not, grasped it or not. The time taken for the training would vary. I mean, if you're talking about, say, a disease outbreak or any specific, I mean, it's not necessarily it has to be clinical in nature, it could be even program awareness. There are close to 60 plus programs which are running, and many of the people in the field do not know operational aspects of the programs. So when we say training, it's not necessarily skill-based, cannot be replaced. These are things which could actually help out in the areas which are non-skill based, but could be for refresher or for awareness building of various activities. Then we look further into saying that, okay, if we look at data acquisition as a big problem statement, what have we been doing there? So we started way back in 2009 when we looked at Tamil Nadu as, because it was the best place to do, I mean, it's the best public health system over here. So we started looking at sub-center level at Tamil Nadu. So took up one block and started doing, as rightly said, a POC. Very small numbers just to test the model to see whether it's working, what are the challenges which we face. So we've taken a lot of inputs from that system and we moved across to Baramati. Now the reason why we did that is there are a number of things which we need to start looking at. It's not just language which is the issue, it's also governance. You need to start looking at what's the buy-in from the governance. You also need to start looking at what are the softwares which are there. In Tamil Nadu, we were actually not into the software space because we are not a software company. Okay, so we were looking at using existing softwares that exist from NIC, put them onto the same platform, try it out. Didn't work because the systems which have been built over there are typically based on carrying a physical register. The first screen which we used to get over there was enter the patient ID, which is there only in a register which they have to carry. So we said that, okay, let's redo this entire thing and came to Baramati, in which we started working on with the partners. I'll come to the ecosystem partners to build something from scratch based on the needs which we were getting out. So we built this thing, which is again open access software. And we've been trying it for the last 12 months. Close to 100 ANMs across 3 taluks have been using this. This is covering a population of 950,000 people. Data is there for the past 2 years in there. We are working right now in terms of seeing how we can make meaningful use of the data. As a result of which, we basically looked at 2 things. One is a complete architecture refresh. The pilot which we said was being built using students to build something. But what we felt is when it comes to scale, we started looking at involving our own solution architects to try and make it as a replicable model which could be used cross-country, and it should be cross-platform. So when we start looking at these kind of models, our aim is basically to look at one district. For us, scale at one district itself is a big challenge. You can ask all the people over here, the people who are actually working on the field, the challenge of working at a district level and going below that. And we are starting from a village level upwards. To reach a district is something which we think is a big challenge. Once we get the model right at a district level, it will be replicable in India. But however, there are parallel projects which are going on in other countries. So models going on the same kind of activity is going on in Nigeria, it's going on in Sri Lanka, it's going on in Philippines. So we know that what would be the feedback which we'll get. This was in turn documented and submitted to the Innovation Working Group, which is again a combination of WHO and Harvard and a whole lot of other people. We got selected in the top 13 submissions for this kind of a program. But is data collection sufficient to solve the problem on the ground? The health worker is doing a lot more than just data collection. They're also doing information education for the population, for the ASHA trainings, and for their own trainings. At the same time, they also need to collect information from the field, diagnostic information. So how can a single platform play a role in trying to do all these activities? So this is typically a case of saying that, okay, can we keep the architecture common across various different solution needs on the ground? So we took the training and assessment architecture, and we are mapping that with the architecture for data acquisition. And basically, we will come out with a common architecture on that. The idea is to look at some kind of a dashboard like this, which is to meaningfully use the data and to look at vulnerable areas. So if I can get a GIS map which gives me a radius of influence of a PHC, and I can start looking at vulnerable areas, can I start looking at models wherein I look at different other models of care reaching out? So we are working with partners. If you go to our stall, you'll see these kind of things. We are working on a mobile unit which could only take care of the diagnostics, and maybe there could be other models of care which can take care of the curative part, because what we've been doing so far has largely been on the preventive side of it. It's not simple, okay, it is tough. This is the ecosystem required to run a project at any point in time. This is just for the data acquisition. I have a similar chart for the training and assessment. So if you go into the details of it, it's very important to pull in all these agencies and come out with a conclusive kind of a solution. So we are taking this as a best practice to other countries now and saying that if you have this ecosystem, you're good to go. If not, then you need to make that ecosystem before you can even take the next step. Thank you.